everybody. Welcome to another episode of City Girls Pod. And this is the show where we like to talk about all things Sex in the City, including And Just Like That. And we have two more pleasant episodes. You don't get to see me rant and rave, so maybe that'll be different for y'all. But we're talking about season 2, episode 5 and 6. And I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Jax is here.
Hi. The only downside to these episodes being better is that I don't get to see you rant and rave. So we're going to have to cover something within the next month or two that just gets you going because I live for it.
Yeah. And we have our friend Megan is here.
Hi.
Yay.
Hello.
Welcome back.
We missed you, Megan.
Yes.
Thank you. I missed you guys too. Happy to be back, especially on these episodes rather than some of the other ones.
Yes. Well, and it's interesting because a couple people messaged me and were like, oh, is it really that bad or was it just a bit? And y'all should know, if you've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time or anything that I cover, I don't do bits. It's not me. I'm not a performer. I'm not trying to entertain you. I'm a critic that is here to provide critical analysis for the things that we talk about. And sometimes it makes me upset. And I
Now, let's be clear. Your intention was not to entertain, but it was entertaining. But yeah, no, it's not all a bit. Like anything Rachel was saying was like stuff that we were texting each other too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And I was texting Megan too.
Yeah.
It's like, what? I can't believe they're doing this. Are you kidding me? But Megan, since you haven't been on this recap for a while, how have you felt about it? Just like that, are you more mixed on it, or have you been pretty like, what do you think?
I think season 2 has been confusing. It's like been up and down for me. I did think episode 4 was really, I just didn't like that episode, I think.
Yeah.
And I've been listening to the Writers Room podcast. I don't know if you guys have been doing that, but it's just very clear that the writers think they're hitting it out of the park. They think this is the best thing since sliced bread. And so it's really, I find it fascinating.
Yeah, that is interesting.
That and I don't think we're in the minority. I think we're in the majority.
Yes.
Find it not as good as they think it is.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because there's elements of particularly this first episode that seemed almost an admission that they know that the audience hasn't liked it.
Oh, they know.
And, yeah. And so they think they have better taste or smarter or what? It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into it, but like they think what they're doing, like, yeah, they know that everyone was upset about the Steve thing and that people don't like Che, but I don't think they understand why people don't like Che. Like they think Che is so cool and like funny and no one else does. And
well, part of the problem is that they're acting in ways that aren't reasonable for their character. Yeah. And so that makes them frustrating because the way that they built up the personality doesn't match the choices they're making.
I agree. I think that's why these episodes were a little bit better, because I think Che's finally acting like Che would act.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Rachel, you mentioned on, I think, our last episode about, the Che of it all and saying that, like, if they were in more scenes with Carrie or we were focusing on their relationship with Carrie, it would be better. And I mean, we'll get into it when we get into the recap, but like, yeah, lo and behold, Che's a heck of a lot better when they're interacting with Carrie.
Yeah, even though that didn't really make sense. We'll talk about it. Why on earth would Carrie call her that then? Why on earth would Carrie call them then? It makes no sense.
Why is Carrie friends with any of the podcast people? Like, I don't think she would be friends with
No,
them. Like, she's still
no.
friends with that other guy. I forget his name.
Yeah, she's like
Yeah.
giving Jackie the buck.
Jackie. Yeah. I'm like, who is this guy? I don't need him. There's already too many characters on the show.
Well, let's dive in. Episode 5, Trick or Treat. Carrie has a run-in with a tech entrepreneur. Miranda and Che navigate conflicting schedules, and Charlotte veers into stage mom territory. And so the interesting thing, both of these episodes were quite a bit better than what we've seen, and it's fascinating that both of them were directed by Cynthia Nixon, and it's her first time directing anything in the Sex and the City universe, and her first time, I think, directing anything.
No,
So
she directed last season.
I don't think so.
I think
I
she
thought
did.
it only had 2 on her IMDb.
I thought she directed last season. Wasn't that in the documentary?
According to IMDb, it only has 2.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Let's see. Oh, you're right. She did do 1 last season, episode 6. Diwali 1. That was the Big Seema episode.
Yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and then 2, but that's it. That's all she's directed. There was 1 documentary thing, but that she did, but that's it. So that to me is just fascinating. I would love to talk to her. Oh, I would just be so curious, because I just can't believe that she could be happy with this portrayal of Miranda. And it seemed like the changes that were made in these 2 episodes almost confirmed that.
Yeah, I don't know how she feels. I don't think she's really talked about it much. I mean, she talked about, she talked about in season 1 about having an opinion on who Miranda was going to be with, but I haven't read anything else recently about her opinions. No,
I just can't imagine that she's a fan of Hausfrau Miranda. I just can't. I don't understand.
It's weird to me though, because yeah, Megan, how you were saying that she had an opinion on who she should be with, and that, it influenced the writers, and it was Che. Makes me think that for some reason Cynthia Nixon thought this was a good idea, and it's now backfiring, and maybe she's not even having fun playing the character, or she's realizing the feedback that she's getting for it. But there's a part of me that's like, these women, I mean, definitely Sarah Jessica Parker, but Cynthia Nixon and Kristen Davis too, like they had a lot of say in the production of this. And if she was really that against it, I think that it wouldn't have shaken out the way that it did.
Yeah. So we start off with this costume party, this Halloween party. And let's just all agree that if you have to explain your Halloween costume, it's lame.
Yeah.
We all agree.
Of course, but I think that's the point. Like they would have lame costumes. is what they said on the writers' room. They're like, they wanted them to have lame costumes. I mean, it was pretty funny.
Yeah. So Carrie is Helen Gurley Brown, founder of Cosmo, and you didn't come as a costume. You came as a giant bummer. That's a good line. I thought. Funny.
Yeah,
and it's true.
And then Charlotte and Harry are from the Americas show.
I mean, let's be real though. Harry in that wig was worth it all to me.
That was funny.
So funny. I was also thinking about that couple costumes usually do end up that way, where like one person is like not noticeable without the other one.
Yes.
I feel like there's always one stronger costume in the couple costume.
Are you into couples costumes, Megan?
Oh my God, I've done so many in my lifetime. One time I was a bee and my boyfriend was the beekeeper.
Oh, that's cute. See, I figure that's one of the main advantages of being in a couple is you get to wear couple costumes.
Yeah. I've never done it with my husband because, I mean, we're old and we just don't really do much for Halloween.
Uh-huh.
What about you, Jax?
I usually do couples costumes or like duo costumes, like with the kids I used to nanny for. So like I've done Angel and Devil, and yeah, so and or like kitties. So that's like I think it's kind of fun to dress up with the girls that I used to nanny for.
Mhm.
Um, I'm all in. And this year I've asked my sister if I can get in on their couples costume or their family costume because their dog is going to be the lion. She's going to be Dorothy.
Oh,
Your
it's so
partner
cute.
is going to be Scarecrow, and I think the baby's going to be Tin Man. And I
Oh
was
my
like, I could be Glinda the Good Witch
Ah,
or the Bad Witch. Like, what do
yes.
you need?
My cousin Anne, they do, instead of doing a Christmas card, they do a Halloween card, and every year. And she just had her, I think, fifth, sixth. Anyway, she has a lot of kids. And so they do these movie posters, and it
That's
is
so
the
cute.
cutest thing. I'll have to send you some of they've done like all the Toy Story characters, they've done the Incredibles, they've done Harry Potter, they did Home Alone. It was really,
I
really
love
fun.
that.
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
say it is one of my favorite things about Instagram is looking at all those crazy family costumes that the influencers do. I'm like, I would never have time to do this, but I like looking at it.
Yeah.
It's fun to see.
Yes.
My kids are too old, but yeah, I like to look at it. It's some people are really creative.
So Seema tells Naya that she has the hottest place to meet single men. And I did think it was a little bit funny when they were like sperm bank, monastery, a Marvel movie. That was funny.
That is funny.
But evidently the hot place is a 5-star hotel bar, because I forget exactly what she said, but basically like people aren't coming in and out. It's somewhat limited, but you have a lot of people who are staying there, so it's like classy, but like I guess people still hook up. I don't know. Is the idea. I feel like that's a pretty solid strategy.
I do too. I've suggested that to friends of mine, but they've not taken me up on it.
Yeah.
I did think though, wouldn't they all be from out of town?
Well, yeah, but I think she was trying to, because Naya ends up
Oh,
getting
they
this
just wanted
hookup,
to hook up. So
and
yeah,
she gets to experience the one night stand. I think that's
Got it.
what she kind of wanted.
I see.
Uh,
That makes sense.
yes. And so then we have Lisa is the bride of Frankenstein. Husband didn't get dressed up, but they had seemed like things are going pretty well for them in these 2 episodes. Lisa and husband.
Yeah.
I forget his name, but they were doing better. And then we have the he ends up dressing up as Paul Revere,
So George
husband.
Washington.
Yeah, it was in that era.
On the writers podcast, I did not know this before, but apparently he played George Washington in Hamilton,
Oh,
Okay.
and
that's cool.
that's the actual Hamilton costume.
Oh,
That's a funny
Yeah,
Easter
that's
egg.
why I said it's George Washington because that, and a lot of people knew that. I didn't know that, but
I didn't know that. Ho, ho, ho. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch-alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind-the-scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/hallmarkies.
And so then we have Rock getting approached by a model hunter for Ralph Lauren. And I thought this was going to pay off differently than it ended up paying off. I thought, they're going to end up getting like, it's going to be a Ponzi scheme or it's going to be something. Like I was as skeptical as Harry was. And so I was kind of like, I don't really even understand the need for this plot because I think it all kind of turned out, ends up in the paper and everything. Maybe it'll have something else happen, but I was expecting this to pay off more.
Yeah, I was expecting it to end in disaster, but weirdly, I was like, oh, I'm kind of cool with the way it turned out because I liked that we got to see Charlotte connect with Rock over something that is very Charlotte.
Mhm.
And it was like her getting to have all of her Ralph Lauren moments, but it was a little bit like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it was just so that Charlotte could bond with Rock, which is nice, but like you said, it's not. It didn't have a lot of substance.
I mean, we did get to see Harry show up in his wig,
Yeah,
which,
that was
like,
funny.
I guess there's not a lot of conflict, but hey,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
It was
Yeah.
fun to have Charlotte constantly mention the Ralph Lauren thing because she does mention that in Sex and the City. And I love when they actually bring things back from Sex and the City, which they don't do as much as I thought they would.
Yeah.
So that was fun that she's constantly making reference to her model days, her
Mhm.
teenage model days, because she says that in that I think it's season 4 episode. So yeah, I thought
Yeah.
that was fun.
Well, and you had mentioned to me off air that that this whole thing with SEMA and the Hamptons was something that you wanted them to tie back in because I'd forgotten that Big had a house in the Hamptons that we talked about.
Isn't that where they were going the night he died? Jax, do you remember this?
Yeah, I thought they were. So did she sell that? Like, what happened?
I don't know because another podcast I listen to a lot, they talk about it too, and they're like, "What happened to the Hampton house?" And then to just like, the thing that bothers me about that so badly is they could solve it with one line, like just say, "Oh, I sold the house. Too bad I sold that house," or "Too bad the
Yeah.
house is under construction," or "Too bad I rented the house because it's
Yes.
memories." Something like that, and then we could all just like relax. But
Mhm.
like, it's like they constantly like make these mistakes that just make me so confused
Yeah.
Mhm.
and take me out of it. It's just
Mhm.
like it takes me out. And I know I'm highly critical of this show in a way that I'm not in anything else. And I pay attention to this in a way that I don't pay attention to anything else. But I just want the writers to do that same thing, like,
Yeah.
I guess. And maybe it's different when you're in it, like when you're writing it versus when you're watching the episodes over and over and over again when you're in your 20s, like I did with Sex and the City. But it's like I remember everything and they don't. And it's and
Mhm.
this is not from Sex and the City. This is from And Just Like That.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and I think that it's one thing to point something out. It's another thing for it to be a deal breaker. And there's so many other things that are deal breakers that it's just like, oh my gosh, I don't know. That they just feels lazy, feels sloppy.
Yeah,
yeah,
and I think Megan, given the fact that like with this show, like I think they're acting like they pride themselves on putting all those nuggets in for us and
Yeah.
that they are so good about tying it in, remembering all the things. So I think you're absolutely right. It's like they could have solved that with one line and we solved that plot line, but they didn't, and it's really not okay.
Mhm. So we had Seema. She starts flirting with this guy, the gin guy. And it turns out when they get together that he needs help in the bedroom. And they were trying to make a point that when Seema uses help, vibrator, um, he's very dismissive of that and thinks it's gross. But he can use the help all he wants, and that's supposed to be sexy. And so there's this sort of double standard when it comes to women and sensuality, which I think is a fair point.
What I was really confused about, and maybe it was just me, was he upset about the fact that she was doing it herself, or was he just upset about the noise? Because it seemed like he was upset about the noise, and I'm like, it just sounds like an electric toothbrush, dude. Like, it's the same noise. Like, I don't understand. But,
I
but it would
think
make more sense if he was upset that she was doing, but
the way I read it is that like the noise was like reminding him that she was using it.
Okay.
And it was kind of like insulting to his ego that like she needed it and he wasn't enough.
But
Well, I
also,
don't
Was
like,
the
if,
way I read it.
Yeah.
yeah, if he wanted to be, he could be like, "Oh, let me help you out with that."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I think that's like very sexy.
I think
Mm.
that's the normal thing a guy would do. Like, I don't know any guy that would just lay there while you did it. Like, most guys would at least help in some way. And that made it kind of sad. I also thought her line to Carrie that, like, at this age, basically, this is all I get is B plus sex. And I was like, that's so sad.
I thought it was interesting. It could have been like funnier. I mean, maybe if we're just more invested in Seema, I don't know. But then we also so we have Naya having the one night stand, and she's like super into it. She has a great time. She likes this.
Yeah, I thought that was
Reliving.
fun.
Yeah. But she's still talking. Was it about sports or something with her?
Yeah, the Nets.
The Nets.
I guess I'm like, okay, I really like Naya. I'm just sort of wishing that they just decided to have an open relationship while he was gone and maybe figure things out. When I'm
Mhm.
not sure it's worth, not that it's not worth exploring other things they both might need, but it's like, I think they could give their marriage more of a shot because there
Mhm.
seems to be so much there still.
Well, it was so weird because it seemed to be the final straw was him suggesting they use a surrogate.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that didn't really make sense. Why would
I,
that be the final straw?
I think it's because she doesn't want to have a kid, and he wants to have a kid.
Mm.
Oh, well,
So,
then that makes more
like,
sense. Yeah.
So it was like she never, like, they've been the whole last season they were like arguing about whether or not to have a kid, and then for him to be like, oh well, we'll just do a surrogate. She's like, well, that's not the problem. The problem is I don't want to have a kid.
Mhm.
I think that's how I read it. But yeah.
And I guess, I mean, that does make a lot more sense because then it's like, okay, there's really no compromising with the kids or no kids thing. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is completely off topic and completely random, but I was just thinking is that if they have this guy from Hamilton and they have obviously Sarah Jessica Parker's done musicals before. They have Cynthia Nixon's done Broadway a bunch. I think she's done musicals. You have you have all of these
Sarah Ramirez, she can sing.
Sarah Ramirez,
Mhm.
amazing Tony winner.
Yes.
They should do a musical episode of
That'd be
it just like
amazing.
that. I would die. That would vindicate the whole season.
You're like, all is right in the world. It's totally fine now.
I think that would be so. I think you would love it, and I think a lot of people would hate it. I'll be honest with you, Rachel.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know how I feel about it, but I think, and I love that you would love it, but I think a lot of people would hate it. But yeah,
it would be so
a lot of
good.
people hate this show anyway. So
Hey,
go
Go
down.
for
not.
broke.
I don't know if Kristen Davis has ever done Broadway. I feel like maybe she has, but I don't know. But yeah, that would be so fun. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I'm always in for a musical episode. The theater kid in me.
Did you see that interview with Erin Krakow? She said that she started saying there was going to be a musical episode of When Calls the Heart, and then she backpedaled and she was like, not really musical episode, but an episode with lots of music. So
Like
that
Aaron.
that piqued my curiosity. I'll tell you that.
Like, I cannot wait for July 30th to kick things off.
Right. But anyway, so then Carrie, she meets this guy George, that crashes into her because she stops talking, and she's talking on the phone in the middle of the bike lane. So maybe you can elaborate on this a little bit, Jax. What is going on here with this bike, with the bike lanes in New York? And like, would this really happen? Like, do people really, like, her stopping in the middle of the bike lane and causing, because somebody who's not from New York, I was like, what?
Well, I've almost gotten hit by quite a few bikers, and it's
Yeah.
probably a little bit my fault and a little bit their fault. I thought,
Like, is it such a social faux pas to stop in the middle of the bike lane?
I actually didn't think it was as much as like the way that he was angry at her so much, and that she was like, not like, well, you weren't watching either, and whatever. Like,
She was just like crossing the street, and then she kind of stops, and she's talking on the phone or whatever, and he's like, lady.
Yeah. And he got so angry that I was like, well, it's not entirely her fault.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, because the bike lanes are not that like defined. Like, it's just kind of part of the road.
Yeah. And I usually, like, most of the time bikers will at least be cognizant of, like, if people are allowed to walk, like if the traffic, usually it's the bike lane and then the car lane. And usually, you can kind of like sashay across the road at your leisure if you have the walk sign, or at least I do.
Yeah. Well, and this guy, so he's an app developer. He has this partner who he does the apps with. It felt like he was in a cult or something. Like, it reminded me of that Brian Wilson movie where he's being controlled by that guy. I'm like, this relationship is very strange, I thought.
I thought it was so weird that she didn't just offer to, well, so she thinks he's poor, which I thought was kind of silly. But in the hospital, when his credit card gets declined, which we later learned because of fraud, she like turns her back, and I'm like, Carrie, if you think it's your fault, just pay for his visit. We all know you're super wealthy now, so just pay for his visit. Like, it made no sense. So instead she brings him soup. I'm like, Carrie, you were like, it is kind of a very Carrie thing. But I was like, in real life, like, normal people would just pay. Like, I would just like, I'm so sorry, let me pay for your
or just like just give him like $100. I mean, this is Carrie is the person who just dropped $100K at the party because she felt mildly uncomfortable. So I mean,
exactly.
She can handle
it just makes no sense.
Urgent care visit.
And then to bring him soup, like, that is just so random. But
yeah, and I mean, and I guess he was random. Like, "What? You're here? You're still here?" Like, he was surprised.
Yeah.
And Carrie's looking around like, "Oh, whoa, you're rich." Like, she's taking it all in.
Yeah. So then we have more awkwardness between Miranda and Che. Miranda doesn't like the spicy curry. She is having to wake up super early in order to go and wake Brady up and get Brady settled, and all of this is taking a toll. And Che just wants to hang out with the friends and play video games and stuff like that. And they're just I felt, at least in this episode, they acknowledged the fact that these two people shouldn't be together and were leading in totally different lives, where in the past it was never really acknowledged, and so it made the choices confusing. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, it did, but it was just kind of annoying. I don't know.
But then we get, and I'm like, move that stupid chair.
I know.
Keep stubbing their toe on it. Oh my gosh. But then they have this focus group for the pilot. They filmed the pilot. Now they have focus group. You have the one the one older man who makes the she error, which I've done it a ton of times. You try your best, but it's hard. I don't know. I didn't, I felt like they were trying to say like, oh, well, he's obviously an old fashioned bigot. And it's like, no,
Yeah, I mean, and
we all do it. I don't know
we
anybody that doesn't slip up.
we all do it, and also like anything that you find that the proper way to correct that is literally just to say, oh, you know what I mean? You just
Yeah.
correct it in real time and you move on.
Yeah.
Like it's the focus group was interesting to watch though, because I feel like some of the focus group things could have been lifted right from what people are saying about
Yeah,
Che on just like that.
Well,
No,
and so they have this one person who is basically the focus group of, and just like that, like you said,
Yeah.
saying that it's a dad joke of what non-binary experience is, and they hate Che. And the thing that was, I guess, interesting to me is I do not think that this would send Che into this spiral, because they said the exact same thing when they were going over the scenes. They said that these jokes were cringe and that they were bad and they were one note. And so they would not be surprised when viewers have the same reaction that they had.
Yeah, I thought it would be more like, I told them
Yeah,
that.
that's right.
But no.
What do you think, Megan?
I just thought it was like Michael Patrick King telling us all that he knows that we don't like Che. It just felt kind of like, I don't know. I mean, I think the point was to make Che, to feel for Che and show another, side of Che. But to me, it just came off as like Michael Patrick King being like, you guys just don't get it. Like, and I just let, I mean, and I think
it's your fault that we don't get it. We don't get it because it's been terribly written.
Well, and the Writers Room podcast, they were like, people don't know how hard it is when people criticize you and like, oh, it's so terrible. And I think they're like really like hurting from our feedback. And I do kind of feel bad because I don't want to hurt people's feelings, but it's also like, first of all, you all are like millionaires. Second of all, like this is part of the job, right? I mean, I know it's probably a sucky part of the job, but it is part of the job that made you the millions. So I don't know.
Yeah, and also like I think that it's sometimes tricky, like for creatives when it's feedback that it's just feels very mean-spirited. But this is actually coming from your fan base who really loves you, and it's actually constructive. It's the whole Chase says the calls coming from inside the house. It's like, we actually want to like this, and this you not paying attention.
Well, that's when people were like, oh, are you doing a bit? I was like, I rant so rarely that when it happens, it is deserved. And there is nothing, maybe not as loudly, but there's nothing that I said in that recap that I would not have said to their face. If they asked me, what do I think? I would have said that I would have said exactly what I said.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure it wouldn't be pleasant to hear somebody say those things. I get that, but I don't know. It was backed up with specific examples of why it wasn't working. And it's not a personal insult as far as who they are as people and humans. And it's just that what they're doing is very confusing to me. And I don't understand if what they're trying to do is, I would think, portray non-binary individuals in a positive, empowering way, why they chose these choices and why they made Miranda this housefrau character. I just don't understand. I don't understand.
He's Johnny.
And he's Darren.
Do you like movies?
Do you like your childhood?
Do you like movies from your childhood?
Do you like podcasts about movies from your childhood?
If you answered yes to one or all those questions, then you might enjoy NostalgiaCast. It's a podcast about movies from your childhood.
So if you're nostalgic for nostalgia, then you might like NostalgiaCast. See, that's the name of our podcast, NostalgiaCast.
Yeah, I think they got that.
Should we sign off?
Let's do it. I'm Johnny.
And he's Darren.
And this is
NostalgiaCast.
I win. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, but basically Miranda and Che have this whole fight, and Che says, I'm a mess. I need space. Miranda says, there's nobody like you. And I mean, I wrote down, why did Che and Miranda even like each other? It doesn't make, I don't understand.
It should have been a sexy little fling for like a couple weeks. And then it was like, wow, thank you, Che. You really let me know that like I'm queer and, you know, I'm going to now seek out relationships that are different from the marriage that I'm in. Like, but no, I mean, also like, I can't believe Che's attracted to Miranda. It's all just big question marks.
Yeah.
They have no chemistry. I'm sorry, but they don't.
None. Yeah. And then, so we have Carrie going over to George's house, and they're about to get it on, and the partner calls in, and it was kind of funny. Like talking to the, like he leaves the partner on FaceTime, and Carrie's like talking to them. And then Carrie says, I think you're actually married to Paul. He's your wife. And then she says, and just like that, at least I got up off the bike. So there we go. Because I guess the only other person she dated was the podcast guy.
And he was hot.
Oh, he was hot.
I know.
Oh.
He was really hot.
Yeah. He wanted her to go to that rooftop party, and it freaking ruined everything.
I want to go to the rooftop party.
Yeah.
He wasn't asking her to get married or be exclusive. I'm like, he's asking you to do something besides, you know, not just have sex with him. And I think that's okay. Just be very clear that like, hey, I'm going with you as a friend. We're friends with benefits.
Right.
Like in the world of Sex in the City, I would probably give this like a 7, but in the world of And Just Like That, I'd give it like an 8.5. It was way better than than what we've seen.
I was going to give it a 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely concur with that. It feels like the franchise that we all know and loved.
So our next episode is called Bomb Cyclone, and Carrie asks Che to be her moral support at a conference for widows. Miranda broaches on an uncomfortable conversation with Steve. So overall, what did you think of this episode, Jax?
Favorite episode of the season by far so far. I love a New York weather moment. It makes you feel like we're all in this together, and these are the fun things that are happening, and it makes New York City even more of a character in the story, which I love. I thought we got to see some real depth with the Steve and Miranda relationship that we haven't been seeing, that I was grateful to see. I actually thought this is my favorite episode that Che has been in. And the stuff with Charlotte and the condoms we can get into. I'm all for sex positivity, but there was something that was a little cringe about some of that. But overall, definitely my favorite of the season so far.
Yeah, it was kind of cringe, but I felt like it was kind of authentic cringe to Charlotte.
Totally.
I feel like she's kind of sometimes a cringe character.
You know what I actually think it is, Rachel? And I know that like this is something that bothers you too. I really don't love the sort of like petulant teen thing either.
Yeah.
It's not for me. I'm not saying it has to be like we love each other all the time, but like all the New York City kids that I've either coached through acting stuff or nannied for are like lovely kids, and they were lovely kids all the way through. And I just don't like this vibe.
What I didn't buy is that Lily would make this sort of ultimatum to her mom. I don't think any teen would do that. I think, and I also think that Lily, you wouldn't want to sort of risk that your first time, I think either. I think that Lily would be more careful. And I don't know. So yeah, the whole setup was ridiculous, even if I did admittedly laugh when she's in that store. Like,
yeah, Lily, let's be honest.
Funny.
Lily would be on birth control.
Yeah.
Yes.
He would be on birth control. I have a teenage boy. I know all the girls are on birth control. All the moms. My mom did it. like she would be on birth control because condoms really aren't that effective. So I would not want my child having sex for the first time with just a condom. I would want them like
Yeah. Well,
birth
and
control,
also
condoms every day.
even just for their health, a lot of girls. I know I was on birth control when I was in high school, for many,
Mhm.
many years, just for health reasons, not necessarily for contraceptive, certainly. Um, but yeah, so that is very likely for
But
sure.
maybe she was on birth control and she still wanted them to use condoms, which I would understand that.
hmm But
Mhm.
one thing is interesting, and I didn't realize this until we were covering the first movie, but there aren't very many winter/Christmas episodes of Sex in the City. And this wasn't necessarily Christmas, but it kind of had a bit of a whimsy, I thought, with the snowstorm.
Definitely.
It
Yeah,
was fun.
the original show, I think Michael Patrick King said, is like an internal or like always in spring, like constantly
Yeah.
Mhm.
springy
Yeah.
until like that very last season. They have a few winter
hmm
episodes, but yeah, I agree with Jax. It was really fun. I've never lived in a place that snows, so I have a lot of questions.
But well, I mean, it's true that they wouldn't cancel that WidowCon for sure
They
in New
wouldn't?
York. No,
No.
I was like, don't they
because
just
most people can
cancel
just take the
everything when it snows?
subway.
Yeah, most people just go on the subway. Like it's the whole thing that like
Oh, really?
you'll definitely have people backing out, but like I don't think they would cancel.
No.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
don't they just cancel everything when it snows? This is such a California girl. Like that.
Like in
Go
Maryland where I
outside like
lived,
that?
I mean, Maryland where I lived, they'd cancel everything if there was even a report of snow, but that was because there were all these long winding roads and people would get into crashes and stuff. And we got a new superintendent one year, and they were from Colorado, and they were like, "Oh, we're not canceling, we're tough, whatever." And there was a bus accident, and luckily I don't think anybody was hurt or
Oh
anything, but
no.
Yeah. Everybody was so upset and so outraged that I don't think he ever did that again. It's like that because snow is one thing. Snow isn't really a problem. It's the black ice. And if you're
Mhm.
on these long country roads, and if you get on, especially in something like a school bus, if you get on that, then forget it. You're
Mhm.
toast. And I personally, I don't understand. Here in Utah, they try to be all tough and be like, we're not gonna cancel school. And I'm like, I don't really understand it, because at least, to the very least, I don't understand why you don't have a delay. Like,
Totally.
that just makes total sense to me. Like, give people a little bit more time. They're not rushing to get everybody where they need to be. But yeah, I was always a big fan of canceling school, canceling, because it's one thing to have a day off. It's another thing to have an unexpected day off.
Oh my God.
Mhm.
That makes it especially fun. And I just remember
Yeah.
standing like next to the radio and being like, come on, Frederick County Schools, Frederick County Schools, Frederick County Schools. And then they did like, so um,
I was always so jealous of that as a kid. I'd be like, we never get any snow. We never get a day off, random day off.
yeah, because it's just extra fun. And my mom, well, a lot for when I was in high school, my mom had a baby my freshman year of high school, and so she was like super busy, with that. And so she never really, not never, but she didn't make us breakfast that often. She was usually either asleep or with the baby. And but if we had a snow day, then she would make breakfast, and so it was very exciting.
I
It's
love
like,
the energy of a
oh.
snow day. I love that you're like breakfast and no school.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, and so we find out that Carrie, I guess, has written 3 books. Sex in the City, of course, Manhattan, and then now Love and Lost, which I feel like those would all be pretty big sellers. Manhattan, that made me laugh.
Yeah. This influencer girl sucks, and I hate the way she was written. Like I think that the actress did a good job of portraying what was on the page. She did exactly what the assignment was, but like come
Yeah.
on. Like I think it could I get it's funny, but like say what you want about influencer culture. She wouldn't have been that insufferable. She would have at least pretended to have read the book or
Yeah.
have not been like, well, tell me about your lipstick colors.
Yeah.
I guess it's funny for the bit, but I just thought it was so unspecific
Yeah.
and it was unfunny to me.
This show doesn't understand podcasts. It doesn't understand influencers. It doesn't understand the internet. Like I because you would absolutely at the very least pretend to have read, and every author that I have had on the podcast, I have read their book.
Yeah.
Like every single one. And even if it was just sort of skimming and reading the chapter headings or something like that, you absolutely would.
Yeah. But you guys are both really nice. I mean, there must be some, I mean, I don't know a lot of influencers.
Yeah.
But I would think there must be some out there that are like that.
But it's so competitive that you can't afford to show up unprepared, unqualified, not have good questions. Again, I think at the very least you would fake it.
Yeah.
You would pretend to have read it. You would, yeah.
Well, Rachel, I think that's a good point that it's so competitive. And if this person has enough of a following that Carrie Bradshaw is meeting with them, maybe this person even has an assistant that would have just been like, here are the questions. And then you find out that, she didn't really read the book or, something that I would buy.
Yeah.
But this, or it'd be like, okay, so I Googled you and it's like,
yeah.
No,
oh my God.
Come on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only time I guess maybe I haven't read a book is if like the person's coming on from multiple things, like maybe they've written a book and they're starring in a movie of the week or whatever. Then maybe then I'll just ask, how was it reading?
There are only so many hours in the day.
Yeah. But I mean, how was it writing that? Or what was it like, or something like that? But anyway, yeah, it was funny, and then to see her, I don't think that would destroy your Apple, but they got a nice little Apple ad in product placement.
Fair.
Yeah. And then that's where Seema asks Carrie to go in on a Hamptons house.
Hamptons, yeah.
Which makes me very excited about the Hamptons, but also, like we said in the beginning, a little bit confused. But I love things based in the Hamptons. I've never been, and I just think it's so like, I don't know. I just love watching it on the screen.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen that much. My biggest connection with the Hamptons is watching Ina Garten. And I love her cookbooks so much. I do not like her show at all. She's always just very like Jeffrey, like Yum, taste test this, I'm just like, what?
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anne of Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
I've never been in the Hamptons either, but I
Really?
love the Sex and the City. No, I'd love to go. Oh, hey, puppy. But I'd love to go because I was inspired by Sex and the City when they go and, Charlotte's hooking up and getting crabs and
that
doing the whole
burger
thing.
episode.
Yes. So I feel like I do think that there are bound to be some adventures in the Hamptons this summer if they show that. Like I'm guessing that we're getting to that.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about, we have Che and they're super depressed and they're doing the cameos to bring an income. And I do think that they are probably a type that would get a number of cameos, that would be successful, depending on the price that she's depending on the price that they're charging. And Miranda's very annoyed about this. And it says that you need to get out of the house, that you need to, I guess, do stand up or get out and do stuff. Like Miranda's not happy that they're just doing these cameos. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was. So I think it's actually great that Che's doing the cameos, but the fact that they're doing it in bed, like laying down when Miranda's sleeping next to them, it's so disrespectful. Like I even think that going out to like if she was, I think they had sex because she was saying they both had an orgasm and then they were going to bed. If Che got up and was about to leave and it's like, oh, I'm going out there to do my cameos, and Miranda's like, well, why didn't you do that earlier? That seems at least like somewhat more respectful, but it's like, you're gonna lay there and say this stuff loudly while Miranda's trying to sleep. Like, I don't know. I just was like, and then Miranda's not giving a lot of space for what seems like a true, not just a mental health thing right now, but like just a really bad career slump. So it's like, why you're not going to do each other?
I wouldn't want this cameo, that's for sure. I think the people that do the good cameos are like funny and engaging and clever. Like I know Debbie Gibson makes killing off of cameos, but I've seen some of hers and she like sings for people and super like smart. And I know that I think the biggest moneymaker is the guy who played Kevin on the Office. All the Office people make bank on cameo, but I think that they make it into a bit. They make it funny, and so you want to get something special, not just like, hey. So Carrie is just about to email Aiden, and they have this whole sort of thing about Naya texting with her husband. Charlotte says, oh, I didn't keep in touch with Trey. And then we also have Carrie saying Steve told her that he would not take off his wedding ring. So there was all this back and forth. And how do you feel, Megan, about this Carrie Aiden thing coming up?
I wish they would have brought Aiden in a more natural way. It felt really clunky to just be like, oh, I have more baggage with this lady than I had with Aiden. It's like, you haven't talked about Aiden in so long. It just felt really like clunky. Also the Trey thing, like Charlotte's like, I wanted to be friends with Trey. It's like, no, you didn't. What are you talking about? Like, you did not want that. And then the scene where, so in the writer's room podcast, they talk about that scene with Carrie and the writing partner. And Michael Patrick King makes this comment about how Sarah Jessica Parker would want to play, and I'm not going to do this justice, so everyone should go listen to it, but like would want to play a character where someone else was way more invested in the relationship than she was. And I was like, oh my God, are they talking about Kim Cattrall? Like it really sounded like it was like I was like, and maybe I'm reading way too much into this. But the way he said it was like, oh yeah, Sarah, and I knew Sarah Jessica Parker would want to play someone where one person in the relationship was more invested than the other.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because I know like everything Sarah Jessica Parker always says about it is like, oh, there is no feud. I don't even know what she's talking about.
Yes.
So yeah, I thought like, and of course he didn't say it, so I have no idea that's what he meant, but I was kind of like,
you really missed Samantha's presence in the group in this. I mean, especially with it would have been so funny if she had been there with Charlotte. Like,
the
that
best.
The whole thing,
I mean, I don't think everyone realizes how much we miss her. Like, I mean, I think they do. That's why HBO called her up and paid her like, I don't know how much, but a lot of money. Because it's true. And the other three characters are great, but it's hard to watch without her.
Yeah, she's like deeply missed. But I have to say, Rachel Dratch in this episode, I loved that we had some Rachel Dratch. She is a national treasure, that woman.
Yeah.
But you got to kind of see like what I feel is like sort of a mean girl side of Carrie, like
Yes.
really dismissive. I don't like it.
Yeah,
I don't
that
like
was.
it.
I thought so too. I was like, "Come on, Carrie, like, be like a little nicer." I don't know. And I guess it's fun to imagine a life of Carrie before Sex and the City. But I also
Yeah.
thought, like, couldn't you have brought back someone that she, kind of dissed in the first?
Yeah.
I'm sure there was people.
Yeah, because it would have been a perfect place to bring Amy Sedaris back.
Yes.
Because
great too.
she was her publicist for the first book, and so that would have been a perfect place. But I do like the idea of Carrie writing rom-coms. That's really funny to me, and that I think I if they went down that kind of, I don't think they will, but if they went down that path and she started writing some like a screenplay, I think that could be really funny.
That would be funny. The other thing I was thinking about the other actress was, remember the actress that dates Aiden after Carrie?
Yes.
With the face. I was like, why couldn't they have brought her back? And then the whole Aiden thing would have made a lot more sense. She would have been like she would have been started thinking about Aiden, not just randomly mentioning him at a dinner table when, like, So, but I don't know. Maybe they couldn't. I don't know.
Because Sarah Jessica Parker was in so many terrible rom-coms that I think it could be really funny.
That's true.
Like
yeah.
Failure to Launch, like
Would
absolutely
have been better than doing a podcast.
Yeah.
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 You know what I hated? You were just talking about the Charlotte situation. When Charlotte calls Carrie to ask if she has condoms, and Carrie acts like it's ridiculous and basically tells us that she's not using condoms. She's like, I'm not worried about getting pregnant. She's like, what about STDs? And Carrie's like, you think I had an STD situation? No, you use the condoms so that you don't have an STD situation. Are you kidding?
Right.
What?
I mean, I took that also as like she hasn't been with anybody hardly except for the podcast guy. So she wouldn't have. But
she said the podcast guy. Yeah. So I was like, oh, well, and yeah.
And I mean, it does seem like Carrie does seem like the kind of person who would leave it on to the guys.
True.
But that's so not, I don't know. But Sex and the City's always had problems with, like, they never use condoms in the first, season. So
Samantha was always the best one about it.
Yeah, exactly. Samantha. So, yeah, I mean, it was a little awkward. I was like, well, wouldn't you want to protect yourself? I mean, you don't really know.
Yeah.
I mean, these, especially older men. And, like, it was also kind of STD shaming, which, like, people who have STDs, like, it doesn't mean necessarily that they're, that they sleep around or there's, like, a lot of STDs and, that, and I just didn't, it's like, don't shame poor people who have a medical issue.
Right.
It was so
That's
icky.
true. I did really like the whole scene with Lisa and the wig. That I thought was effective. And the sort of the back and forth between her and her husband, which event are they going to go to? And then when she shows up with this, there's this she makes it through the snow. Then she puts on the wig, and then this other woman, it's like, a little snow won't stop us. That was good. I liked it.
I have to say that, like, this was the only time this season where I cried, and although I'll never have any idea what it's like to be a Black woman, there's something that's so powerful and palpable about the sisterhood and about her creating something out of this and being like, well, of course the snow's not going to stop me because I've had so many things against me in my life and I'm here. And when her husband showed up, that was also really special too.
It was cute. Yeah. And it's nice that they are trying at least to have different married relationships. That you've got Harry and Charlotte, who are pretty stable for the most part. You've got Lisa and the husband, I forget his name, but that in between, they're kind of in the middle. And then obviously Naya is divorcing. So and Miranda and Steve are a mess. So I think they are trying to kind of show a spectrum, which is nice.
Yeah.
And I know that black hair is like a really important topic to that community. And so I thought it was good. It was well done. Okay, let's see here. So then we have WidowCon, and we have first Carrie, that this coat thing that she was wearing out in the snow, it was crazy. She's like, whoa.
Here
It was
for it.
cool. It was
I was
interesting.
so
It was
here
different.
for it. Yeah.
But
I loved it.
Yeah. It was real good. It was fun. Because they have her dressing very bohemian in this series. And so, which is fine. But this was a real statement piece.
Yes. It was, although, like, where does she put that in her apartment? But okay.
Right.
It was huge.
But yeah, I loved that. I think
Mhm.
I think that shot was like, I knew that was coming. So
And I don't know who this comedian was. She wasn't on the IMDb. But I thought that she was, Julie White is her name. Julie White. She wasn't on the IMDb yesterday, but now she is. Julie White, she was, I thought, really good. And they say she's the Dawn Rickles of death.
He was great.
And so Carrie's getting like really nervous about because they're introducing her. She's hilarious. All this stuff. And then the only thing I didn't buy, I liked the dynamic of Che and Carrie. I did not buy that Carrie would call Che in that situation. That made no sense to me.
yeah, I just don't see them being friends. But yeah, I mean, again, I guess we'll just accept it and move on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But Che says,
I can't accept what's going on between Che and Miranda.
Yeah.
So I'll sure like
Sure.
Che and Carrie.
Okay.
Yeah. And she
Better
says,
than the other. I don't really, not that I don't like the actor, but that other guy that I always forget his name, Smoke's boyfriend, that makes even less sense than Che.
Makes
Yeah.
even less sense.
So I guess I'll.
yeah. And the comedian thanks Carrie for her book, and they had a nice moment. And it says, you move on because you've outgrown who you used to be, not because you've moved on from the person. And Che says, you just had the actual love of your life die. I just had my ego die. So, and so that was a good scene. I enjoyed that. WidowCon. And then we have Steve with Miranda, and they says Brady, I guess, is working at the bar, and Steve's like, do you have a problem with that? And she's like, no, it's new information. And Miranda says, are you moving? And he says, no, I'm not moving. And she's like, my name is on the mortgage, which is not how marriage works. That, like, I mean, I don't know the laws in New York as far as community property, but unless you have like a prenup, all property is couple property in a marriage.
I'm wondering if Steve had bad credit, and that in particular, they didn't put him on the mortgage thing because of that, because he could bring down her credit.
Yeah, but I think that was just more of a jab that he said that, and I think you're right, Rachel. During the divorce proceedings, they're going to have to figure it out. But
totally,
I think it was just like it was a jab.
Well, Steve says, I made it. I built it, which is true.
Yeah.
And he says, you never wanted to come to Brooklyn. You never even wanted Brady, which was a low blow, but true.
Yes, low blow, but true. Exactly.
I was so happy to see him mad. I was like, mad, because this whole time he has just been kind of like taking it, and it's like, it's okay to be mad that, she cheated on you, and that she, I mean, I thought it was a good fight. I thought, and it was very low blows, but I've gotten in a fight with my husband before, and we said some things that were not nice. So it does happen. I mean, when you're, especially someone you've been married with that long,
Mhm.
and then divorce, like that, it felt real, like
Mhm.
a real
Yeah.
fight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it felt very real. I thought this is some of the best acting we've seen all season. And even when he's begging her to stay, and he's like, "This isn't us. This isn't us." Like he's giving a tour de force performance, and Cynthia Nixon too. Like there's so much going on in this scene. It's so good.
Yeah. And I kind of wish they hadn't added the ending where they try to kind of make Steve seem like the equal party in
Yeah.
this dissolution of the marriage, which is not true. Even if he was with another woman, he wasn't the one that I mean, he was unfaithful in the movie, but his actions were not the reason why his infidelity is not the reason why the marriage fell apart.
Well, I actually thought where this was going, which it didn't, was that she was going to find the condom, she was going to look at it, and then he was going to be like, Whole Foods girl, and then she was going to start laughing, and they were going to like kind of bond over it, and you would see the beginning of a friendship. But she was mad, and I'm like, is she jealous? Which is okay too. Like feelings are complicated, but like, ooh, like,
well, and she's like,
yeah,
you can't play the victim anymore, and I'm like, yes, he can.
Sure, he can, and he wasn't.
You still left him
sure.
for Jay. He still can.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I get it that
I was mad.
any dissolution of a marriage involves two people, and him just being so satisfied for a decade with ice cream and not having relationships with his wife, like that is a problem. But nevertheless, she's the one that broke it off.
Yeah,
that stopped.
Yeah,
trying.
and I feel like she's made it seem like she's so over Steve, and that she never even wanted the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So for her to be so mad about it, it just didn't really make sense.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense at all.
Then it was a rough weekend for Miranda, because not only does she finally break up with Steve and they're going to move out and everything, Che breaks up with her as well.
Maybe not the best time for Che to do that. After she came in, she didn't even acknowledge what Miranda said about Steve. And I'm not saying that she needs to draw it out, but I feel like the fact that she said, like, yeah, I'm thinking that about us too. It's like, I'm sorry, what?
And they say this probably isn't going to get better. And I guess Miranda's go-to post-breakup thing is to cuddle, I guess. She did with both of them.
Hey. I did like that happened. I thought it was sad and beautiful.
And then at the end, we have Carrie sending the email to Aiden. So I feel like it's going to be very cringe. Do you anticipate him having more than one episode arc? Are we going to see him for a couple, or?
I think we'll see him for a couple, but I don't know. What do you think, Megan?
I think he's in a few.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but I think he's in a few.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll see, I guess. So yeah, this episode had enough laughs and genuine moments, and I was happy for Steve, and the Widow Con was pretty fun. So I think I will give it just a solid 8.
Yeah, for me in the Just Like That world, this one's like a 9. But yeah, I think 8's a solid ranking.
Yeah, it was definitely the best so far.
Yeah.
It had good moments.
So keep at it, Cynthia Nixon. Please keep directing.
Yes.
We need it. So there we go. Let us know what you think of these episodes. Did you enjoy them as much as we did? We'd love to hear in the comments section or on Twitter at City Girls Pod. And Megan, are you active on social media right now or not? I lost track.
Where can you find me? You can find me at my house. Yeah, I guess on the Instagram, I think I'm Megan D3200, but I haven't posted in a while. I'm just kind of not. Yeah. I don't know, but I'm going to Hawaii, so I think I'm going to post when I'm there.
Take me with you. Oh,
that's good.
Yeah, I know.
All right, Jax, how can people find you?
Jacqueline C tweets on Twitter and Jacqueline Collier on Instagram and on Threads.
You can find me at Rachel's Reviews all over the place. And also just make sure you're following Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast, all over social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps us a lot. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. Most of our viewers are not subscribers. So if you're one of those people, please subscribe. Yeah. And it really helps us a lot. And and check out the Patreon, which is a lot of fun, great way to connect. And then we also have the merch store. You can get City Girls Pod merch. So check that out. And thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye.